Welcome to this week's episode. I'm excited to be here today. There's something powerful about returning to the place where it all began. I'm back in my office today in the very room when I first sat down, terrified to record this podcast, terrified to tell my story. And now with podcasts today, you have to focus on video. So terrified. But with everything that we do, there's a learning curve.
Audio Jungle.
And honestly, the fact that I'm here now talking about identity crisis and imposter syndrome feels almost magical. Like my story matters. And maybe that's exactly why I need to be here. When I started this journey years ago, podcast was in an audio format. I would research, have my notes, I would discuss the topic. It was great. At the time, I was a successful businesswoman and I started a podcast to help other women grow their business, either through creating a selling story, looking at operations and creating efficiencies, going into the legal and the insurance requirements. And of course, one of my favorite topics was marketing, because at that world, the internet started to come into play. Social media was becoming the norm, and I was able to teach my clients, how to use this as a tool to grow their business. But as I was doing this, I walked into the studio with pages and pages of notes clutched in my hands. It was like a lifeline. But now with video, you need to act natural, and you really want to have real conversations with real people. So as I'm working through this, I want us to connect, just like a conversation with friends. It sounded so simple, so terrifying, because what I was really afraid of wasn't the microphone or camera, it was myself. I was afraid of my own narrative, of being seen, of discovering who I actually was underneath all the versions of myself that I built in survival mode. But here's what nobody tells you about healing and growth. You can do everything right. You could leave that toxic relationship. You can build the life you always wanted. You could find your purpose and still experience moments where you have no idea who you are anymore. I know this because I'm living it now. I spent years rebuilding my identity. I've done the therapy, the journaling, the hard conversations. I know my values. I know my why. I created a life I'm generally proud of. And yet this morning, getting ready to record, I had a very intrusive thought in the book. Who am I doing this for? What if I'm not good enough anymore? What if people see right through me? All of those questions are classic imposter syndrome. But here's what I've learned. These feelings aren't always a sign that something's wrong. Sometimes they're a sign that something's changing. And change, even positive change, can make you feel like you're losing yourself. Psychologists call it an inner conflict characterized by impressions that life lacks meaning or by confusion about one personal identity. But I think there's more to that. The version of you that you can't take with you moving forward. So let me explain that for a reason. Something that took me years to understand. You will create different versions of yourself in different seasons of your life as you move chapter through chapter through chapter. And sometimes the version that saved you needs to be left behind for you to keep growing. Think about it. When you're in survival mode, whether that's an abusive relationship, a toxic job, or you're just navigating trauma, you develop armor. You become harder, more defensive, more guarded, and you have to. That version of yourself keeps you safe. But here's the conflict. When you're finally out of that situation, you're trying to build something new, that armor becomes a cage. For me, I love the version of myself that clawed her way out of a toxic relationship. She was strong, aggressive. She had boundaries to a fault. She was bulletproof. And I thought I needed her to stay here to maintain everything I've built. But that version of me, she was created for survival, not for thriving. And subconsciously, I was terrified that if I let her go, I lose everything she fought for. I become weak again. I become vulnerable again, hurt again. So I held on. And even when that version of me started conflicting with the peaceful, authentic life I was trying to create, it became unbearable. But here's what's wild. There's a grieving process that comes with letting go of the old versions of yourself, letting go of that armor. You think it would be easy, right? You just shed that survival skin and move forward. But it's not, because that version of you meant something. She protected you. She got you through hell. She deserves to be honored. But she has also needed to be released. That process of shedding old habits, patterns, and identities, really, that no longer serves you. It's not linear. You'll heal, grow, evolve, and suddenly find yourself reverting to old behaviors under stress. But that's not failure. That's called being human. The key is to recognize when it happens and ask yourself, why is this old version of me showing up right now? What is she trying to protect me from? Because usually old patterns resurface, and it's because something in your current environment is triggering an old wound. And that's information. That's an invitation to go deeper and to do research. So why do you keep experiencing imposter syndrome even when you made it? I mean, that's a question I get asked all the time. I used to think imposter syndrome would go away once I achieved certain things, once I had the life I wanted, the career I dreamed of, the clarity about who I was, but it doesn't work that way. Imposter syndrome shows up at every new level because every new level requires a different version of you. And stepping into that new version feels vulnerable, uncertain, like you're pretending to be someone you're not. But here's the reframe. You're not pretending. You're becoming. So those intrusive thoughts that whisper, who am I to be doing this, aren't proof that you don't belong. They're proof that you're stepping outside your comfort zone, that you're growing into something bigger than you've been before. The trick is not to let those thoughts run the show. Instead, anchor yourself in your why. You rewrite your story. So whenever I feel lost, like I'm drowning in self-doubt or confusion about who I am, I go back to my why. Why did I start this podcast? Not to become internet famous or to prove something. I started it because I wanted to help people who felt as lost and as broken as I once did. I want them to know they weren't alone, that healing was possible, that they could rebuild their identity after it being shattered. That's my why. And when I reconnect with that, the noise quiets. The imposter syndrome softens. I remember that this isn't about me being perfect or having it all figured out. It's about showing up authentically and sharing what I'm learning. If you're feeling lost right now, I want you to ask yourself, why? Why did you start this journey? What were you hoping to achieve, to feel, or to become? What would you do if money wasn't an object, if failure wasn't a possibility? Your answers will point you back to yourself. And here's something I've been wrestling with. I'm not the same person who started this podcast 10 years ago. And that makes me nervous, because what if people don't like the new version of me? What if they only connect with the scared, scrappy version? What if showing up differently means losing everything I've built? But then I realized growth requires evolution, and the people who truly resonate with your message will grow with you. The version of me who started stronger than before was raw and wounded and fighting to survive. She was necessary. She was brave. And I'm so grateful for her. But the version of me sitting here today, she's calmer, more grounded. She's done the work. She's not defined by her trauma anymore. She's defined by her transformation. And that's the whole point. That is why it's okay to be a different person. So if you're experiencing your own identity crisis right now, here's what I want you to know. It's normal. You go through multiple identity shifts in your lifetime. That's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of growth. You need to honor every version of yourself, even the ones you're leaving behind, because they all served a purpose. They got you through whatever you needed to. But you need to get curious, not critical. When old patterns or insecurities show up, don't beat yourself up. Ask, what is it here to teach me? What am I learning from this? Because then you're going to reconnect with your core. Who are you at the deepest level? What do you value? What makes you feel alive? Give yourself grace. Healing isn't linear. Growth isn't either. You're going to have setbacks, but that doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're human. Someone once told me grow through your experiences. At first it sounded cheesy, right? But now I get it. Because you can experience something hard and play the victim. Or you can experience something hard and ask, what is here to teach me? How can I use this to become stronger? And that's what I've chosen to do. And that's why I hope this podcast helps you do too. So if you're sitting there right now feeling lost, confused, or like you don't recognize yourself, I want you to know you are not broken. You're evolving. You're becoming. And that scared, uncertain part of you, she's not a problem. She's a sign that you are stepping into something bigger. Keep going. Keep growing. Keep showing up as whoever you're becoming. You're stronger than you think. So until next time, this is Kelly DeAndrea, and you are stronger than before.